Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, both of you. And we have a sponsor this week. We are sponsored anonymously, Liloy Nishmas, my father, not my father, but the anonymous father, Moshe Aaron ben Rabbi Yerucham Fischel, someone who very much enjoyed listening to Rabbi Orlofsky as we would drive back and forth for treatments during his very short, brutal battle with cancer. I have to tell you how touched I am whenever I hear these things. Somebody actually put out a book about her battle with cancer, and in the book she discusses how listening to my shiurim helped her get through the process. I've had this from other people. When I used to have cassette tapes, someone told me that they spoke to Kupat Cholim here in Israel to see if they would buy my tapes for people who are sick, because it gives them chizuk. And that's such a tremendous thing. It continues. I also appreciated the hours of shiurim available for listening during my year of Shiva. Thank you, Rabbi Orlofsky, for the inspiration and laughs along the way. Someone told me once that Eichlers in Brooklyn, during the Sphira, normally when they put you on hold, they put on music, but during the Sphira, they used to put on my tapes. So the guy told me, I used to call up just to be put on hold so I could listen to the tapes. You cheap Jew, could have just bought one. But anyway, so thank you so much for that. A tremendous inspiration. Well, we're underway now. We had our anniversary show. We're in our second year. I'm a little more comfortable now with the general form that we're doing. And so as I established all the way back in the very first podcast, as you recall, sitting in the corner of my bedroom, looking like I was making a hostage video. I discussed that I'm not only going to be doing the Torah, I have other things to discuss. For example, I wanted to do recipes. I wanted to share, now that it's getting cold, soup weather. Now, personally, I think you can eat soup anytime. I don't know why there's this concept that soup is only reserved for cold weather. There's a bagel store here in Har Nof, and they only make soup during the winter. Some you can't get soup. I happen to enjoy soup all the time, but so I just want to share with you my onion soup recipe because it is the best. Let me get onto my soapbox a bit because I'm going to be ranting today, full disclosure. And that is that I look up onion soup recipes, and I can't tell you how many times I see onion soup mix in it. Now, if I wanted to make an onion soup, what's the point of putting onion soup mix in it? Making chicken soup and putting in a chicken soup mix, there's no point to making it. Just make the mix. You can't take a chicken and vegetables and water and make a chicken soup. You have to add in chicken soup mix. This disturbs me. If it was like when I was back in yeshiva and most of the soup was just soup mix, and they would have you have a tea bag with a little string, and you would dip it into hot water. So they would take a pulki and tie a little string to it and dip it into the soup, so we could say now it was fleshig, yeah. Osam used to make these little instant soup mixes, and one of them said basari. One of the poskim at the time said, "There's not enough fleshigs in there to be considered basari. Don't worry about it." They must have just done the little tea bag pulki trick, and dipped it in, and so I could say now officially it's basari. But I'm not happy with soup mix. The fact of the matter is, somebody wrote me. I was really very surprised when I gave my breaded chicken recipe last week. They said, "Oh, no wonder you had a heart attack." And I was like, "Why?" They said, "A little mayonnaise." I coated the chicken with a little mayonnaise. They said, "Well, you put in onion soup mix," says MSG. Onion soup mix was a quarter of a cup and went in for 3 chickens, and you think that's what's going to do me in? Trust me. If at the end of my life I look back and they say, "Yeah, it was the MSG and the onion soup mix that he sprinkled on top of the chicken that did him in," I will be surprised. Anyway, but I don't like it because I don't think it makes a soup. It's not called a soup. Anyway, so here's what I do. I cut up 3 large onions, or 4 medium onions, or 7 very small onions. I really don't know. You'll have to work that out for yourself. This is proportions. And I cut them into slices. Now, full disclosure, sometimes I can't cut them all the way because they're too big, so I cut the onion in half, and then I cut them into half rings. and a little bit of oil. You could use olive oil if you're nervous. Yeah. And I fry them up until they get dark. And then I sprinkle a little flour on top, a little bit of flour. Doesn't have to be white flour. It could be whole wheat flour. It could be spelt, Flour, spelt flour. Anyway, sprinkle that on top just till it becomes a little more of a thick of a paste. And then I pour in 2 liters of water. I leave it, stir it up, wait for it to boil. When it comes to a boil, I then take 3 to 4 red onions, depending on the size, and I chop them up. Those aren't sliced. I chop them up. I add them in, stir them in, add another 2 liters. When that boils up, then I add some dry red wine. How much? Like this. Okay, so I guess it depends on the size of the bottle, the opening of the bottle, and how round the circumference of your pot is. But that's the amount. It goes like this over here. And stir that in. And then I add salt, pepper, and curry. That's it. And I stir it up. And I may add another 2 liters at this point, depending on the size of the pot. I let it boil up. And you let it thicken. At some point you have to taste it and see if it needs a little more salt, a little more pepper, a little more curry. And when it's done, gewaldig. If you want, you can eat it just the way it is. If you want to eat it French style, you put some grated cheese and some croutons, and put the soup on top of it. You don't need to do that. That's less healthy. But the soup itself is it's very good. It's very filling. And it's good on a cold day. Have some onion soup. It's always a big hit here in the house when I make it. But that's not what I want to talk about this week. I'll tell you what I want to talk about this week, and this is what inspired me. I've been teaching Mesilas Yesharim for years. Now, at this point, I teach Mesilas Yesharim to ladies in Har Nof, 11:30 on Sunday morning. I teach Mesilas Yesharim to men and women in Telstone, 8 o'clock on Tuesday nights. And I give a daf yomi every morning at 8:30. Now, when I talked about getting fulfillment from learning Torah, I got a number of people who said, wow, I've never really had a really fulfilling Gemara Shir. I would like to participate. And I say, listen, I don't record the Gemara Shir because it is dynamic. You have to be part of it. I said, you could call in if you want. There is an actual fellow. He's an EMT and he works at night and he calls in to be part of the Shir. But most people said not. So someone gave a suggestion, which I happen to think is fascinating. And he said, okay, so then let's do an online Shir. Bli Neder, in the beginning of January, when we make our Siyam Shas, I will be making available, details will follow, a Chabura online. There'll be a nominal fee. I have to set up the computer so that everybody can be in a little window so I can see who you are. I once did one of these things where people could just add comments. It's not the same thing. I'm sitting there looking at myself. I already know what I look like. Not that I couldn't spend hours doing that. but that's doesn't have the dynamism as looking at the puzzled looks on people's faces as I discuss a nida doing hesed on a kli cheres samud psil, and the absolute fulfillment that I, as a Maggid Shir, gets from knowing that I'm talking about things that almost nobody understands or cares about. And then it's my job, of course, to make that relevant and show how within that is really the secret of our neshama. No, I'm just kidding. But whatever the topic happens to be, obviously, we're starting in brachas. That's a much easier one. It's a no-brainer. I mean, it says made for me. Half of the Gemaras are about going to the bathroom. So you can imagine the opportunities that presents for spirituality. But so we're going to hopefully do it over there. But I do give a daf yomi. And in fact, there have been some requests that I do a Mesilas Yesharim Chabura online. Because again, I happen to think that Mesilas Yesharim is one of those Svarim that is so underappreciated because it's eminently practical, but people don't know how to make it practical. And I have been teaching it for over 30 years. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity for people to really grow in their avodas Hashem. It's so practical. The Mesilas Yesharim in Perek Aleph, he mentions that you cannot save yourself from the Yetzer Hara ela b'hashgafa gedola. Now, what is Hashgafa? So Hashgafa is lahashkif. The way you do lahashkif, the way you do that outlook, I'm not sure exactly how to, is that you get up on top of a mountain and you see the whole view. That's Hashgafa. Hashgafa is to see the whole thing. That's Hashgafa. And this reminded me of a whole bunch of stories that have happened to me that I want to talk about. But I want to, when I teach this idea about Hashgafa, the way that the word is used today is like so often the exact opposite of what the word means. Yeah? The kosuv aluchais libecha. Reb Moshe Shapiro used to say this all the time. When you say kosuv aluchas libecha, a luach is a board and you have to carve into it. And he says in modern Hebrew, we took the word luach to mean something that you immediately erase. The exact antithesis of what the word luach is supposed to mean. And sometimes words, in the words of Humpty Dumpty in Alice Through the Looking Glass, words mean what I want them to mean. The United States just took out the head of ISIS, who by all descriptions was an evil man. And the Washington Post in their headline describes him as a Muslim religious leader, scholar. Muslim religious scholar. It's like, who developed a tremendous empire. So somebody wrote it and said that that's similar to saying Adolf Hitler, a aspiring landscape artist who established a very large empire. Words what we want them to mean. Yeah, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. And that's why it was Napoleon Bonaparte who said history is the events that are decided upon by the victor. So, words are a tricky thing, yeah? Hashgafa today. So I went to speak in a school once on behalf of a seminary. And they said, what is your school's Hashgafa? I said, what do you mean? He says, your Hashgafa. I said, no, I understood what the word meant. I don't know what the question means. Your Hashgafa. So, we believe in God, we believe in Torah, we believe in Yerushalayim, we believe in helping everybody grow it. No, your Hashgafa. I said, what do you mean? Do you say Halo on Yom Ha'atzmaut or not? I said, that's it? That's your Hashgafa? That's what it's been reduced to? Now, I was discussing the question of saying Halo on Yom Ha'atzmaut and Ola Golah, which was a rabbinical training program I used to teach at budding rabbis. The question came up. I said, listen, it's a halachic issue like everything else. Some poskim will say yes and some poskim will say no. And I pointed out that Rav Soloveitchik from Yeshiva University didn't say Halo on Yom Ha'atzmaut. And there was a person in the room who was a musmach from Yeshiva University. He had never been in the Rav's shir. Rabbi Meiselman, who was the Rav's nephew, he always says, whenever anyone quotes the Rav, ask him, how many years were you in the shir? Yeah. He never was in the Rav's shir. I don't know if he ever met the Rav, because he was not well at that point. He says to me, that's a lie, and you know it. Now, do I get things wrong? I get things wrong all the time. Yeah. I'm old enough to remember when a president got something wrong that they had this great word. They used to say, the president misspoke. Now it's a lie. Anything Donald Trump says is a lie. He's a lie. He said it's a lie. Can't be he misspoke. He's a liar. He's a lie. He says, that's a lie and you know it. Calling me a deliberate liar? I said, my father-in-law got smicha from the Rav and he said he didn't say Halo on Yom Ha'atzmaut. He said, that's a lie. I said, Rabbi Orlofsky, who we had on the show, when he was in Yeshiva University, he says, I was in a minyan with the Rav on Yom Ha'atzmaut, and didn't say Hal on Yom Ha'atzmaut. He says, it's a lie. Now, I was lucky, because the new director of Orla Golah happened to be sitting in the room, and he said, I was in a minyan with the Rav on Yom Ha'atzmaut, and he didn't say Hal. I said, is he a liar too? I figure, let's see if we get a little interest going. He says, all the closest Talmidim of the Rav said that he didn't say Hal on Yom Ha'atzmaut. Herschel Schachter, everybody knows. Now, I didn't know it at the time. I have a copy of Herschel Schachter's book. My father-in-law got it for me, on the Rav. And I looked it up. He doesn't say exactly what this young man said. He didn't say that Rav Soloveitchik said Halo on Yom Ha'atzmaut. What he said is, if you say Halo on Yom Ha'atzmaut, you are Macharef and a Magadev, a cursor and a blasphemer of the name of God. That's different than saying you should say it. I know it's fine. It's a fine distinction there. If you can see the difference between saying you should say it, or if you do say it, you're a blasphemer. Like I say, that's a subtlety that's sometimes lost. But I didn't have that available to me at the time. But at the end of class, I said, it's inappropriate for you to call me a liar in front of a shir that I'm giving to rabbis. I said, I heard something years ago from people who were close to Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky held that the Havara Teimani was the most correct one. Because since the Yemenite Jews had been isolated from most communities, they weren't affected as much. Obviously, European Jews were affected by the languages they were exposed to. Sephardi Jews were affected by the countries they were in, and the Teimanim weren't affected by anybody. So, for example, Sephardim have a ches and an ayin, which are guttural letters that I, as an Ashkenazi, are not able to do, but they only have a patach. They pronounce the komets as a patach. They don't have that or that we have. Obviously, if there's two different ones, they should have two different sounds. So there's differences between the two. Teimanim, they have a patach, they have a komets, they have a ches and a ches. They have both. They have a gimel and a gimel. They have a resh, like the Israelis and the Sephardim do, and they have a resh, like Ashkenazim do. They have a tuf and a thuf. So they have like Shabbath. They have all kinds of different sounds. So he felt that this was the closest to the correct Havara, because it had the most sounds to it. So he used to say Kriya Shema over again with the Teimani pronunciation. I have pointed out many times, I am not Pesach Kron. I don't check out my stories. I've been telling this story for 40 years. I don't know if it's true, and I don't really care. But I heard it, I say it over, right? I said, listen, I heard this once. If there was a Talmud of Rabbi Yaakov in the shir, I don't think he would call me a liar. He might say, no, it's not really true. I've heard that too. Rabbi Yaakov didn't really do that. Whatever, but I can't imagine he'd call me a liar. And he said to me, whether you say Halo on Yom Ha'atzmaut is more important than saying Kriya Shema twice a day. I said, Rabbi, surely you don't mean that. I mean, Kriya Shema is the pronouncement of everything we believe in Judaism. It's what Jews go to their death saying. It's what we teach our children when they're little, in their rooms. They say Shema Yisrael. And he said again, whether you say Hal on Yom Ha'atzmaut is more important than saying Kriya Shema twice a day. I said, Rabbi, surely you're familiar with the fact that Kriya Shema is a D'Oraisa, and Hal on Yom Ha'atzmaut is at best a D'Rabbanan. It's not. He says, whether you say Hal on Yom Ha'atzmaut is more important than Kriya Shema twice a day. He says, because it defines your entire Judaism. Wow. There was an NCSY tour to Israel. One was more modern Orthodox, one of the leaders, and one of the leaders was more what I guess we would call yeshivish. And he made arrangements to take the kids to meet different Gedolim, the Boston Rebbe, Rav Scheinberg, like this. He had learned in the Gush, so he went to his Rebbe, Rav Lichtenstein, and he says he's only taking him to their Gedolim. He's not taking him to our Gedolim. I want them to come and see you. So Lichtenstein said, who cares? We agree on 99% of the issues, and the 1% that we disagree wouldn't come up anyway. says, let him go to the Boston Rebbe. He speaks English. His English is easier to understand than mine. So, the Hashgafa. The Hashgafa. So the reason I brought all this up, all this is by way of introduction of what I want to talk about today. As you may have noticed, I'm wearing a hat. I don't usually do that. There was an exception, of course. On my Bein Hazmanim podcast, I had a baseball cap for Bein Hazmanim because we were on teal. But for the most part, I don't. Why did I put this on today? This is what I was thinking about. Because when Shidduchim come up, they ask the question, what's the boy's Hashgafa? I said, well, what do you want to know? Does he wear a black hat? Well, that's not really a Hashgafa, that's a head covering, right? So you can argue it represents an entire philosophy, and sometimes that's true, and sometimes it's not. Rabbi Left liked to tell the story where his son went to a cheder and came home and said, my Rebbe said that anyone who wears a kippas ruga can't have any yiras shamayim because it seeps out of the holes. He says, I can't believe the Arul Chasidim and Meir Sharm don't have any yiras shamayim. It's a head covering. Give a perspective. So people always say to me, no, what they mean is it represents a whole series of Hashgafa. Sometimes, yes. But I know girls who just want to know that the boy wears a black hat and doesn't care about anything else. There's somebody, I don't know if he wants me to mention his name now because, based on the world we're in today. But for years, this was a major person in Chinuch, he used to wear kippas ruga and a hat. And I remember I asked him once, I said, why do you wear kippas ruga? Just out of curiosity. He says, I learned in yeshiva, and the yeshiva said to me, why are you wearing a kippas ruga? And I put on a black yarmulke, and he just laughed. And he says, you can wear anything you want. Now, I don't know why this person looks so silly in a black yarmulke, but for whatever reason he did. But he wore a kippas ruga and a black hat. So what is he hashgafically? I'm going to take this off now. Like I say, all of that was just for my 2-minute introduction. Anyway, but Hashgafa, lahashkif, to get on top of a mountain and look over the entire field. I learned in Yeshiva Chavetz Chaim. I've mentioned this many times. They try to keep it quiet, but I was there. I wasn't there long enough to get smicha because they said the amount of time it would take me, they would have to give it to me posthumously. And then they could just chip it into my tombstone, Rabbi. I decided to go to a more accelerated program. Like I mentioned last week, I wanted to get a discount on my phone. So, in Chavetz Chaim, they didn't dress in black and white. And it's not just they didn't dress in black and white, it was part of their Hashgafa. And the Rosh Hashiva of Henoch, Leibowitz, used to say, look at the pictures, and I challenge you, go and look at the pictures of the Mir in Europe and Slobodka and the yeshivas in Europe. They didn't dress in black and white. The Rosh Hashiva dressed in black and white. Everybody else wore colored shirts, colored hats. When I went to Chavetz Chaim in the 1970s, we were known as the yeshiva with the pink shirts. Now, that's not really true. It depended on the color of your suit. I happen to have a gray suit, so a pink shirt went very nicely with it. Had a gray pink tie that went with it, And with that, of course, I would wear my gray hat. With a brown suit, I'd wear my brown hat. But we didn't wear black hats. And in the summertime, white straw hats. The entire yeshiva was a sea of white straw hats. That's what we wore. The yeshiva felt that this influence of dressing in black and white was contrary to the Masorah that he had received. He felt this was something that came from the Hasidim, that filtered in, and it wasn't our Masorah. Now, he was really big on this, on a lot of things, our Masorah. And he would always say, my father had a Masorah that he got from the Chavetz Chaim, and they would trace it back to the Gra, and and this is how we do things. This is our Hashgafa, this is our Masorah. We're very big on that. I meet Hasidim, not really Hasidim. I meet people who dress like Hasidim. And I say, oh, is your family Hasidish? And they say, no. I said, oh, so which Hasidus are you? He says, none. I just like the lavush. Do you want to be a chassid or just dress like one? Yes, the Barbizon School of Chassidus can teach you how to dress and look like a chassid, and you don't even have to be a chassid. It's so shitchi, it's so external, it's so... But this was so important. Anyway, so years later I went to Chavetz Chaim, they were davening at the Kaisel, whatever the occasion was. And me and another old Chavetz Chaim guy, we came in our white straw hats, and everybody was wearing black hats. I did a double take. Wait, that was only one. I did a double take. I said, "Was haste? What's going on over here?" They said, the Rashiva eased up. I said, why? He says, because the boys couldn't get shidduchim. You show up at some house in Flatbush and you want some guy to go, you're going out with this girl, nice Beis Yaakov girl, and you walk in, with a gray suit and a gray hat and a pink shirt. They don't care how much lumdus you've got. You understand? You don't look it. You don't look it. Yeah? And the most important thing is to look good. And you look marvelous. Marvelous. You got to look good. Sheesh. So, I may have told this story already. I don't remember. I came to Eretzfeld. And I wanted to learn in a kollel. I came to a particular kollel. And I couldn't get a chavrusa. I didn't know why. And I was dressed yeshivish. I had brown slacks, tan jacket, powder blue shirt, nice blue tan tie, brought it all together. Had my hush puppies and my white straw hat. So I found out later they thought I was a tourist. Nobody thought. No, I was dressed like a regular yeshiva guy in Oz. But anyway, what can I tell you? I went to yeshiva where we lived in color, not in black and white. So I came to Eretzfeld and I started to get the lay of the land. So I switched to dark somber suits and white shirts. I had this houndtooth jacket. I eventually gave it away, but it was one of the most beautiful things I ever had. I love that. Give me just a moment. Anyway, so fine. I got myself a black hat. I got black shoes. I got a black trench coat. And okay, I started to fit in. I started to say l'chayra a lot. L'chayra. Started pulling on my beard. Used to rub my hands a lot. That's very important. It's an important move. Okay. Anyway, I go back to America. A guy sees me and says, "It's all there, but doesn't look right." I said, "Why?" He says, "You smile too much. You have to really look miserable." I've never mastered that, I'm sorry to say. But anyway, somebody says to me, "You've become one of them." Boom, boom, boom. I was like, "What do you mean?" "You changed the way you dress to fit in with them. You becoming one of them. Invasion of the body snatchers." I said, "Why does that bother you?" And the person said, "Because you should be free to dress any way that you want." I said, "You see, I practice what you preach. I am dressing however I want. If I'm going to dress different than everybody else, I need a good reason. I need a reason to be different. So, okay, you go to a chasana and everybody's wearing suits and ties, and you're wearing a clown outfit. Okay, so it's because you want to be Mesamech Chas V'Kala, etc. But if you go to a regular dinner party in a clown outfit, Lucy, you got some splaining to do. You understand? Why would you do that? You need to have a reason. If you're out to freshman at Tzibur, means that if you're going to be different, you need a reason for it. But does the hat represent your philosophy? I always thought it was an amazing thing. One of the greatest social commentaries of all time was in a film that came out in 1939. It was popular at the time. It was called The Wizard of Oz. And at the end, Scarecrow wants to get a brain, and the Lion wants to get courage, and the Tin Man wants to get a heart, and they come to the Wizard. And he says to the Scarecrow, in one of the greatest moments of social commentary, Scarecrow, there are people who have no more brains than you have, but they have something you don't have, a college degree. And so from the University of Oz, he gives him a college degree. And he goes, A squared times B squared equals C squared. I'm a genius. Listen, as my father said once, if you're an idiot, you'll be an idiot with a college degree. Says, Lion, there are people who have no more courage than you, but they have something you don't have, a medal. It gives him a medal. Now he's got courage. Tin Man, people who have no more heart than you have, but they have something you don't have, a testimonial. So give you an award. It gives him a plaque. It gets a little tear in his eye, because now he's a wonderful person. This is how it works. And there are people who have no more Yer Shemayim than you do, but they have something you don't have, a black hat. I taught in the yeshiva once, which catered to beginners. And they had a rule. If you came from a family where they wore black hats and you had a black hat, it was okay. But during your first year, you could not put on a black hat because it's too easy. Externalities. I put on a black hat, now I'm from. There was a guy in Or Samech, looked like the biggest Talmid Chacham you ever saw. He had a long, gray beard and hat, pays behind the ears and that. He couldn't read Aleph Beis. But he figured out how to dress the part. Do you want to be a Talmid Chacham or just dress like one? Here at the Barbizon Yeshiva, we can teach you how to fake everybody out. I used to teach when I used to teach Bali Tshuva, I said, look, it's all in the appearance. Nobody cares. It's all in the appearance. You can't say Ramban. And instead of saying Rambam, people say Ramban. The Ramban. You give yourself away in a second. So we used to practice. Rambam, 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 Ramban, Ramban, and Rambam, Rambam, Rambam. I said, it's tricks. When you learn Gemara, look in the Maseres Hashas, and then say, I think this was a Gemara in Yevamis. And people go, oh, you think so? You think so? There was a guy, he didn't know how to learn at all. But everyone thought he was so smart because no matter what they were doing, he'd go, so what's the Havamina? Which happens to be a great trick. It's a great trick. You can do this in a conversation. Yeah. It doesn't matter what anybody says. It doesn't matter. You can try this. It doesn't matter what anybody says. You can say, yeah, but that doesn't explain why. And people immediately go into an explanation, even if it doesn't require an explanation. We're eating at 6. Okay, but that doesn't explain why. Well, I figure that I want to give everybody time to get ready for bed. And then I told this to my kids once. So one time they did it on me, but you never give out a weapon unless you have the antidote. You understand? So they said to me once, okay, that doesn't explain why. And I go, exactly. All right. I'm tired. I wore myself out. This concludes our show, second show of the second year, and the second hour of the second. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You could leave comments, only positive ones. I don't want to hear any negative information. Yeah. I love inspiring stories. I like to hear how you've changed my life and how wonderful you are, and particularly how, as you grow older, you have really grown to look so much more distinguished. It's is what they say about old men. Anyway, and somebody just wrote me. They wanted to know if they could buy Rabbi Orlofsky mugs, and if not, would I mind if they made them themselves? No, by all means, we are not selling paraphernalia yet. So feel free if you want to take the logo and make your own Rabbi Orlofsky show mug. So you have that option. Anyway, you can leave comments. You could subscribe. We're going to be putting out some special things, as I mentioned, starting with the first year in review. I started going through the past podcasts. There were over 60 of them. And it's so hard to pick out the highlights. It's like, where do you take the highlights? It's like trying to find the best of the best of. Anyway, and you can find out about upcoming events. I'm going to America November 18th through December 3rd. If you want to have an event with one of the most inspiring and at the same time intellectually challenging, relevant, and humorous presenters, and you have a lot of money, you can contact me. And when you find out who those people are, who are discerning enough to take advantage of this opportunity, it will be posted in upcoming events. And of course, if you want to sponsor an event, you go to RabbiOrlofsky.com/podcast and click on the sponsor an episode button. That's it for this week. I'm David Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.